Arjuna uvacha jyayasi chet karmanaste mata buddhir janardana tat kim karmani ghore mam niyojayasi keshava. Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you want me to engage in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? Vyami shreneva vakyena buddhim mohayasiva me tad ekam vada nishchitya yena shreyoham apnuyam. My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial for me. Shri Bhagavan uvacha lokesmin dvivida nishta pura prokta maya naga jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical, philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service. Na karmanam anarambhad Neshkarmyam purushosnute na cha sanyasana deva siddhim samadhigacchati. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. Nahi kaschit shanamapi jatu tishtatya karma krite karyate yavasha karma sarva prakriti jergunehi. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. Karmendriyani samyamya ya aste manasa smaran indriyarthan vimudatma mityachara sa uchyate. One who restrains the sense of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. Yastvindriyani manasa niyam yarabhate juna karmendriye karma yogam asakta savishishyate. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. Niyatam kuru karmatvam karma jyayo hya karmanaha sharira yatra pichate na prasidyat akarmanaha. Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. Yagyartat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadatham karma kaunteya mukta sanga samakara. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain free from bondage. Saha yagya praja drishtva puruvacha prajapatihi anena prasavishyadvam ishavostvishta kamaduka. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yajna, sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation." Devan bhavayatanena te deva bhavayantu vaha parasparam bhavayantaha shreya paramavapsyata. The demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you, and thus, by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. Ishtan bhogan hivo devaha dasyante yagya bhavitaha terdattan apradayebhyaha yo bhunkte stena eva saha. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna, sacrifice, will supply all necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. Yajna shistashina santaha muchyante sarva kilbishehi bhunjate te tvagam papaha ye pachantyatma karanat. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered for sacrifice. Others, who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment, verily eat only sin. Annad bhavanti bhutani parjanyad anna sambhavaha yagyad bhavati parjanyaha yagya karma samudbhavaha. All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are provided from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yajna, sacrifice, and yajna is born of prescribed duties. Karma brahmodbhavam vidhi brahmakshara samudbhavam tasmat sarvagatam brahma nitye yajna pratishthitam. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. एवं प्रवर्तितं चक्रं नानुवर्तयतीह यः अघायुरिन्द्रियारामः मोघं पार्थ स जीवति. My dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice thus established by the Vedas certainly leads a life full of sin. Living only for the satisfaction of the senses, such a person lives in vain. Yastvatma ratireva syat atma triptascha manavaha atmanyevacha santushtaha tasya karyam na vidyate. But for one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization, and who is satisfied in the self alone, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. Neva tasya krite nartaha na krite neha kaschana na chasya sarva bhuteshu kaschit artha vyapashrayah. A self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason not to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend on any other living being. Tasmad asaktastatam karyam karma samachara asakto hyacharan karma param apnoti purushaha. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. Karma neva hi samsiddhim asthita janakadaya loka sangrahamevapi sampasyan kartum arhasi. Kings such as Janaka attained perfection solely by performance of prescribed duties. Therefore, just for the sake of educating the people in general, you should perform your work. Yad yad acharati shreshtaha tad tad evetaro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastad anuvartate. Whatever action a great man performs, common men will follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. Name partasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptam avaptavyam varta eva cha karmani. O son of Partha, there is no work prescribed for me within all three planetary systems, nor am I in want of anything, nor have I a need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. Yadi yaham na varteyam jatu karmanya tandritaha mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvashaha. For if I ever failed to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path. Utsideyur ime lokaha na kuryam karma chedaham sankarasya cha kartasyam upahanyami ma prajaha. If I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds would be put to ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. Sakta karmanya vidvamsaha yata kurvanti bharata kuryad vidvamstata saktaha chikirshur loka sangraham. As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, the learned may similarly act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. Na buddhi bhedam janayed Ajnanam karma sanginam joshayet sarva karmani vidvan yukta samacharan. So as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. Prakrate kriyamanani gune karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimoodatma kartaham iti manyate. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. Tattva vittu mahabaho guna karma vibhagayoho guna guneshu vartante iti matvana sajjate. One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, O mighty armed, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing full well the differences between work in devotion and work for fruitive results. Prakrate guna sammudaha sajjante guna karmasu tana krishna vido mandan krishna vinna vichalayet. Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. Mayi sarvani karmani sanyasyadhyatma chetasa nirashir nirmamo bhutva Yudyasva vigatajvaraha. Therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. Ye me matam idam nityam anutishtanti manavaha shraddhavanto nasuyantaha muchyante tepi karmabhihi. Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. Ye tvetad abhyasuyantaha nanutishtanti me matam sarva jnana vimudamsa vidhi nashtana chetasaha. But those who, out of envy, disregard these teachings and do not follow them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled, and ruined in their endeavors for perfection. Sadrasham chestate svasyaha prakrite jnanavanapi prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyati. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish? Indriyasyendriyasyarte ragadvesho vyavasthito tayornavasham agachet tohyasya paripanthino. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion, because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Shreyan svadharmo vigunaha paradharmat svanushthitat svadharme nidhanam shreyaha paradharmo bhayavaha. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. Destruction in the cause of performing one's duty is better than engaging in another's duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous. Arjuna uvacha atakena prayuktoyam papancharati purushaha anichan api varshneya balad iva niyojitaha. Arjuna said, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Kama Esha Krodha Eshaha Rajoguna Samudbhavaha Mahashano Mahapapma Vidyenam Iha Verinam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. Dhume navriyate vannihi yatha darsho malena cha yatholbe navrito garbaha tatha te nedamavritam. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. Avritam jnanametena jnanino nityaverina kamarupena kaunteya dushpurena nalena cha. Thus the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. Indriyani mano buddhihi asyadhishthanamuchyate eter vimohayat yeshaha jnanam avritya dehinam. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. Tasmat tvam indriyan yadau niyamya bharatarshaba papmanam prajahihyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. Therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. Indriyani paranyahuhu indriyabhya param manaha manasastu para buddhihi yo buddhe paratastu saha. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind, and he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. Evam buddhe param buddhva samstabhyatmanam atmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust.